Imagine waking up in a mountain cave after 3 days of darkness and silence. No phone, no food, no distractions. Just you, your mind, and the parts of yourself you've spent your entire life ignoring. The first thing you feel is fear, not the kind that makes you jump, but the kind that makes your whole body tighten, like something ancient is watching you from within. And in that silence, something begins to rise. A memory you buried, a voice you silenced, a version of you that you've labeled as wrong, bad, unacceptable. That's your shadow. And Carl Jung said if you refuse to face it, it will control your entire life from the darkness. But if you face it, if you really face it, you will unlock a power greater than anything you've ever known. And that's what we're doing today. We're going into the cave. We're confronting what you've avoided. And by the end, you won't just understand the shadow, you'll know how to integrate it, transform it, and use it to become the person you were always meant to be.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We've been lied to. We've been told that being good means being nice, staying positive, avoiding conflict, pleasing others. But Jung warned that the more you try to be good by suppressing the bad parts of yourself, the more those parts gain power in the unconscious. They don't disappear. They wait. They gather energy. And they leak out in ways you don't even notice, in your passive-aggressive comments, in your sudden mood swings, in your addictions, your procrastination, your self-sabotage. That's the shadow at work. And the only way to stop it from running your life is to bring it into the light. But here's the catch: your shadow is not just darkness. It's everything you've disowned, everything that didn't get love. That includes your anger, your envy, your lust, but also your brilliance, your confidence, your power, your voice. You buried those things because someone, somewhere, told you they weren't safe. And now you're living a life that feels flat, anxious, disconnected, because you're only living half of who you are. So what do we do? How do we face the shadow without being consumed by it? It starts with radical honesty. We stop pretending. We stop performing. We stop saying we're fine when we're dying inside. You don't need more positivity. You need more truth. You need to look yourself in the mirror and say, what part of me have I been afraid to face? Maybe it's the part of you that wants power. Maybe it's the part of you that's still furious at your parents. Maybe it's the part of you that doesn't care about anyone else's feelings and just wants to be free. Whatever it is, you have to bring it into awareness. You don't act on it. You don't suppress it. You sit with it. You listen to it. You ask it why it exists, what it needs, what it's trying to protect. When I did this the first time, I broke down. I thought I was enlightened. I thought I was evolved. But when I sat in silence, what came up wasn't peace. It was rage. It was shame. It was guilt. I saw myself screaming at someone I loved. I saw myself manipulating people to get what I wanted. I saw how much of my so-called kindness was actually fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being seen, fear of being alone. And that's when I got it. My shadow wasn't evil. It was terrified. It was young. It was wounded. And it had been trying to protect me the only way it knew how, by hiding behind masks. And that's the truth Jung wanted us to see. The shadow isn't a demon. It's a part of you that got exiled. And until you bring it home, it will control your relationships, your creativity, your joy. You'll chase success and wonder why it feels empty. You'll sabotage love and call it fate. You'll repeat the same cycles and blame the world. But the real battle isn't out there. It's in here. And winning it doesn't mean destroying the shadow. It means integrating it, making it conscious, letting it sit at the table with the rest of you. So, how do we do that? First, we track our triggers. Every time something makes you disproportionately angry, jealous, insecure, that's the shadow speaking. Don't dismiss it. Don't justify it. Get curious. Be curious. Ask yourself, what is this reaction really about? Maybe your friend's success isn't annoying, it's threatening a part of you that feels behind. Maybe your partner's silence isn't disrespect, it's activating your fear of abandonment. These reactions are gold. They're clues. They point to parts of you that need attention, not judgment. Second, we write. We journal from the perspective of the shadow. Let it speak. Let it rant. Let it confess. No filters, no edits, just raw honesty. You'll be shocked at what comes out. You'll see parts of yourself that are brilliant, angry, seductive, wild. And instead of being afraid, you'll start to understand. You'll see why they were hidden. You'll feel the pain of exile. And in that pain, you'll find compassion. Because you'll realize that your shadow isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to protect you. It's trying to make sure you're never shamed, rejected, or humiliated again. And once you see that, you can begin to reparent it, and to integrate it, to say, thank you for protecting me. But I've got it from here. Third, we express in healthy, conscious ways. If there's rage, we scream into a pillow, we hit the gym, we dance it out. If there's grief, we cry. If there's desire, we explore it with integrity. The goal is not to suppress or indulge. It's to express and integrate, to let the energy move through you so it doesn't control you. Because what we express consciously no longer needs to act out unconsciously. And that's where the power comes. Not from pretending to be spiritual or nice or perfect, but from being whole, from saying, I am light and dark. I am sacred and messy. I am divine and human. And I accept all of it. This is the moment in the hero's journey that most people run from, with the descent into the underworld, the confrontation with the shadow. But this is also the moment where everything changes, where the fear turns into freedom, where the shame turns into strength, where the fragmentation turns into integration. And when that happens, you don't just change your mind, you change your life. You stop living to be liked. You stop chasing validation. You stop fearing your power. You become grounded, magnetic, unstoppable. Because you're no longer at war with yourself. And here's the wild part. When you do this, the world around you begins to shift. People respond differently. Opportunities flow. Relationships deepen. Not because you're doing anything different, but because you are different. You're congruent. You're real. You're embodying your full spectrum. And that's rare. That's powerful. That's magnetic. People can feel it. And more importantly, you can feel it. You walk into a room and you don't shrink. You speak your truth and you don't flinch. You make decisions and you don't second guess. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're integrated. So let me ask you something. What part of you have you been hiding because you thought it made you unlovable? What gift have you buried because someone told you it was too much? What truth have you swallowed because you were afraid it would make you different? Those parts are not your weakness. They are your gold. They are your magic. They are your power. And if you have the courage to face them, to feel them, to integrate them, you will unlock a level of authenticity, a level of peace, a level of power that most people will never taste. Carl Jung didn't give us a map to avoid the shadow. He gave us a torch to walk into it. Because that's where the treasure is. That's where your true power lives. Not in who you pretend to be, but in who you truly are when nothing is hidden. So if you're ready not just to hear this, but to live it, then it's time. Time to stop running. Time to stop hiding. Time to face your shadow and finally unlock your true power. You made it through the first descent. Now we go further, not just into the shadow, but into the mind that created it, the world that reinforced it, and the soul that's been waiting beneath it all. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That one sentence is enough to rewrite everything you think you know about your problems, your patterns, your identity. Because what if your life isn't happening to you? What if your triggers, your failures, your heartbreaks, they're not punishments but signals? What if the things you hate most about yourself are actually the keys to your power, if only you had the courage to turn the lock? When Jung spoke of the shadow, he wasn't talking about evil. He was talking about the parts of ourselves we've repressed, not because they're bad, but because they were once unsafe. Think of the child who was told they were too loud, too emotional, too intense. But that child didn't stop being those things. They just learned to hide. But the energy didn't disappear. It went underground. And now, as an adult, that person feels stuck, anxious, disconnected. They wonder why they can't speak up in meetings, why they sabotage relationships, why they feel like something's missing, that something is the part they exiled, and the shadow holds it. And the only way to feel whole again is to go back and retrieve it. That's the true work. Not becoming someone new, but reclaiming who you were before the world told you who to be. But this work isn't comfortable, and that's why most people avoid it. It's easier to blame others, to chase distractions, to project the shadow onto the world. That's what we do, isn't it? We see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. We call others selfish, but we're the ones who are afraid to express our needs. We criticize people for being arrogant, but deep down we're terrified of owning our own greatness. We judge those who are bold because we've silenced our own voice. That's projection. And it's the ego's favorite trick to externalize the shadow so we don't have to feel the pain of it inside. But here's the cost. As long as you project the shadow, you stay disconnected from your true self. You stay trapped in cycles of judgment, shame, and blame. You might feel morally superior, but you won't feel free. And beneath it all, your soul knows. It knows that you've abandoned something essential. And it's waiting for you to stop running, stop performing, stop pretending, and finally turn inward. This is where the power begins. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this revealing in me?" The breakup, the rejection, the failure, these aren't random. They're mirrors. They show you where you're still split, where you're still hiding, where you still believe you're not enough. And if you're willing to really look, you'll see that what you've been calling weakness is actually the birthplace of your strength. Take anger, for example. Most of us push it down. We say it's toxic, dangerous, unspiritual. But Jung saw it differently. He saw anger as a signal of violated boundaries, of suppressed truth, of unlived power. When you ignore it, it festers. It turns into resentment, depression, passive aggression. But when you face it, when you ask it what it's trying to say, you gain access to a part of yourself that refuses to be walked over. You reclaim your fire. And that fire, when integrated, becomes fuel for change. The same goes for envy. We're taught to feel ashamed of it. But what if envy is showing you who you're meant to become? What if it's not about wanting what they have, but remembering what you've denied in yourself? You don't envy someone's life unless a part of you knows you're capable of something similar. Envy is a flashlight. It points to your buried desires, your unlived potential, your forgotten dreams, but only if you're willing to look beneath the surface. This is the paradox of the shadow. The parts you fear most are also the parts that hold your power. The things you've been taught to suppress are the very things that will set you free. But you have to be willing to feel the discomfort, to sit in the fire without flinching, to let the illusions burn so the truth can rise. And the truth is this: you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not unworthy. You are whole, but you've forgotten. You've been taught to live as a fragment and to play a role, to wear a mask. And now your soul is ready to remember. But that remembrance requires sacrifice. You have to give up the version of yourself that was built to survive. You have to risk being seen, being misunderstood, being rejected. You have to stop negotiating with your authenticity for the sake of belonging. Because the shadow work is not just about healing. It's about liberation. It's about reclaiming every part of you, especially the ones that terrify you. And when you do that, you become something unstoppable. Not because you're fearless, but because you're whole. You're no longer leaking energy trying to hide parts of yourself. You're no longer trapped in battles between your desires and your conditioning. You're no longer at war with yourself. And in that inner peace, your outer world begins to change. You speak more clearly. You set boundaries without guilt. You create without shame. You love without losing yourself. Because you're no longer performing. You're no longer pretending. You're simply being. And there is nothing more magnetic than someone who is fully themselves. But don't mistake this for a one-time transformation. The shadow has layers, and each time you step into a new level of growth, a new layer will rise. New fears, new projections, new parts asking to be seen. This isn't failure, it's evolution. The deeper you go, the more power you access, the more truth you embody, the more love you can hold not just for others but for yourself. So let me ask you now, what part of you are you still hiding? What emotion do you still judge? What truth are you still afraid to tell? That's your next door. That's your next initiation. And you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be willing. Willing to look, willing to feel, willing to bring light to the places you've kept in shadow. Because here's the real secret. The shadow is not just where your pain lives. It's where your genius lives, your creativity, your intuition, your wildness, your leadership, your voice. All of it has been waiting, not for you to fix it, but for you to welcome it, to say, you belong here too. And when you do that, when you stop trying to be good and start being whole, something incredible happens. You stop needing permission. You stop needing approval. You stop needing anything outside of you to validate what you already know, that your power was never lost. It was just hidden, and now you're ready to claim it. So if you're still watching, still listening, still here, it's time. Time to stop playing small. Time to stop apologizing. Time to stop living according to someone else's script. Face your shadow. Reclaim your power. And watch as the world begins to reflect the truth of who you really are. So now we arrive at the final stretch of this journey, not to end it, but to spiral deeper into a place most people never reach, a place beyond fear, beyond identity, beyond even the concept of self as you've known it. Carl Jung didn't just ask us to face the shadow to become slightly better versions of ourselves. He asked us to do it because the shadow is the gateway to our highest potential, our true power, and our soul's purpose. And if you've come this far, it means you're not here for surface-level transformation. You're here to remember something ancient, something sacred, something that was always yours, long before the world told you what to be. But what happens when we stop running from the shadow? What happens when we stop resisting what we've always feared we are? The answer isn't just clarity, it's intensity. At first, the light of awareness can be blinding. You begin to see patterns you never noticed, how your people-pleasing was actually manipulation, how your anxiety masked repressed rage, how your perfectionism came from a deep fear of being unlovable. And it shakes you, because you have to admit that some of the things you were most proud of were actually coping mechanisms. You have to recognize that your identity itself, what you thought of as you, was built on avoidance. And that's where the ego panics, because it begins to realize that it's not in control anymore. But this is the moment of rebirth, not the kind that's soft or poetic, the kind that rips you apart and rebuilds you from the inside. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by integrating every part of yourself, but not just the light, but the dark, not just the conscious, but the unconscious. It's not about becoming better, it's about becoming real. The paradox is that the more you allow your mess, your wounds, your contradictions, the more coherent you become. You begin to operate from wholeness instead of fragmentation. You begin to act from alignment instead of reaction, and everything changes. You stop chasing validation because you've reclaimed the parts of you that were begging for it. You stop playing small because you've integrated the power that used to terrify you. You stop fearing rejection because you've accepted the parts of you that once felt unworthy. And suddenly life opens. Your relationships deepen not because you're more likable, but because you're more honest. Your creativity expands not because you're trying harder, but because you're blocking less. Your presence becomes magnetic not because you're performing, but because you're no longer hiding. But let's go deeper, because power, true power, is not about dominance. It's not about status or control. It's about presence. It's about coherence. It's about being so fully yourself that others remember who they are in your presence. That's the power that comes from shadow integration. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to announce it. You become it, and people feel it. They feel that you are no longer fragmented, no longer divided, no longer negotiating with fear. But with this power comes responsibility. Because once you've touched your wholeness, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer participate in the illusions of the world. You begin to see the games people play, the masks they wear, the lies they tell themselves, and you have to choose. Will you play along, or will you hold your ground in truth, even if it means being misunderstood? This is the test, because the world doesn't always reward authenticity. Sometimes it punishes it. But the reward is not external. The reward is internal. It's peace. It's clarity. It's the freedom to look in the mirror and say, I am not hiding anymore. And yet, even after all this, the shadow will reappear. Not because you failed, but because you're evolving. Each time you grow, a new layer surfaces. Each time you expand, a deeper fear awakens. And that's not regression, it's revelation. You're being invited into deeper intimacy with yourself. And each time you say yes, you unlock more power, more wisdom, more truth. So don't seek to slay the shadow. Don't seek to transcend it. Seek to dance with it, to dialogue with it, to welcome it as a lifelong teacher. Because the shadow will never disappear. But the more conscious you become, the more it becomes an ally, a guide, a compass. It shows you where you're not yet free. It shows you where you've forgotten your power. It shows you where you've abandoned yourself. And if you're willing to listen, it will always bring you home. But what does this look like in real life? It looks like pausing when you're triggered instead of reacting. It looks like asking, what part of me is speaking right now? Is it a wounded part? A part that needs to be heard? It looks like taking responsibility for your projections when you're blaming, judging, attacking and asking, what in me have I disowned that I see in them? It looks like making time every day to sit with yourself, not to fix, but to witness, to feel what you've been avoiding, to welcome the parts of you that have been waiting for your love. It looks like speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes. It looks like setting boundaries, not to punish others, but to honor yourself. It looks like creating art that scares you, loving in ways that stretch you, making choices that reflect your soul instead of your social conditioning. And most of all, it looks like letting go. Letting go of the need to be understood. Letting go of the need to be liked. Letting go of the old stories that kept you small. Because the truth is, your shadow is not holding you back. You are. And the moment you stop resisting it, everything begins to shift. But I need to ask you something now, something that only you can answer. What would you do if you were no longer afraid of your own power? What would you create? Who would you become? What would you walk away from? What would you stand for? These questions are not hypothetical. They are invitations. Invitations to a life of truth, presence, and purpose. And the only thing standing between you and that life is the part of you that still believes you're not ready. But you are ready. You've always been ready. You've just been waiting for permission. And here it is. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be willing. Willing to face the parts of you that hurt. Willing to feel what you've numbed. Willing to remember what you've forgotten. Willing to stop living half a life and start living a whole one. So, this is your moment. The world doesn't need more polished, perfect, palatable people. It needs real ones, whole ones, brave ones. People who have faced their shadow and come out the other side not as saints, but as sovereign beings. People who are not afraid to feel, to speak, to lead not from ego, but from essence. Carl Jung knew that the future of humanity depended on this. Not just therapy, not just medicine, but consciousness, courage, integration. Because a person who has faced their shadow is not just healed, they are dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to illusions. Dangerous to systems of control, dangerous to anything built on fear. because they can no longer be manipulated. They can no longer be divided. They can no longer be used. And that is the ultimate power, not domination, not control, but freedom. The freedom to live as you are, to love as you are, to lead as you are, fully, unapologetically, authentically. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Face your shadow, unlock your true power, and become the person the world forgot it needed, you.